Next up then folks, working capital. Remember, that's just your current assets and your current liabilities. How do we go about funding them? How do we go about financing them? And it'll all depend on what our policies are really. So remember this diagram here where you've got the permanent current assets at the bottom and the fluctuating at the top. Now, if you're following the matching policy, well, regardless, whichever policy you're following, non-current assets are always, or should be always, financed by long-term finance. So non-current with long-term. What I'm focusing on here, though, is the current assets. Okay, so with matching, then you're going to match the permanent with long-term finance. You're going to get a long-term loan to match, to finance the permanent current assets, whereas you're going to use an overdraft or something for your fluctuating, so short-term finance for your fluctuating assets. So you're matching. Now let's have a look at when you're a bit more aggressive, when you're focusing in more on profitability. Well, in that case, you're going to use less long-term finance, which is cheaper to use less long-term finance, but it's also more risky. So we're going to use more short-term finance, not just for the fluctuating, but also for some of the permanent. Okay, and then finally you've got your conservative, which is where you're focused on having less risk, basically, not so focused on profitability, having less risk, and so therefore you use more long-term finance, more than you would on aggressive, more than you would on matching. So all of the permanent and then half of the fluctuating, for example, and then just some of the fluctuating left for the short-term finance. Okay, so I focused here on current assets. That's because in all three of the policies, the non-current assets are all covered by long-term finance. Okay.